What's up, guys? This is Felix. Thank you again for watching another episode of the LetterBros. I did want to go ahead and just give a quick note, actually two quick notes. One, if you have not seen this movie, please go ahead and do yourself a favor. Don't look anything up about it. Try to keep yourself in the dark and just go and watch this movie. The way Parker and I discuss it, it doesn't do the movie justice as much. Like, we're going over the plot points and all that, and it's still really funny, but this is truly an experience you need to see to believe. Another thing that I will go into it saying is that StreamYard was not working in our favor this episode. We had some Wi-Fi issues, some camera glitching issues, and then in the middle of the episode we had to stop it in order to reset our routers, and for some reason, even though I had my microphone connected and it said that my microphone was connected and was in use, it still decided to use my AirPod microphones, which sound like absolute dog shit. So I will preface it that there is an audio switch in terms of my microphone. Everything on Parker's end was fixed after the reset, so he sounds great, but there will be audio quality dips in my microphone through this episode. I just wanted to go ahead and preface that before everybody's like, what the heck? What just happened? So other than that, it's a great episode. Dives into a lot of things for this movie that, again, please go and watch if you haven't seen it yet to join in on the discussion, because again, some of the things that we're going to say you can't really believe until you watch the movie. But again, thank you and enjoy the episode.
Yeah. I just have it pulled up in a different window.
Yeah, what do you have in the background? I just saw this shirtless man.
It's an ad. I have cat TV on for Marty.
Cat TV?
Yeah, look. It's squirrels.
I could not, dude. If I put that on, my dog would literally like jump into the TV.
Yeah, Marty just did. I had to calm him down a little bit.
That's so funny.
Ladies and gentlemen, prepare for a cinematic odyssey through the 100 greatest films spanning from the roaring 1920s to the cutting-edge masterpieces of 2024. Carefully curated from the lovely people on Letterboxd. Two intrepid souls embark on a journey through a treasure trove of timeless classics and groundbreaking contemporary works, where each frame embodies the enduring magic of the silver screen. Grab your popcorn and join us on this epic expedition through a century of cinematic excellence, where every film promises to enchant, inspire, and leave an indelible mark on the soul. And now, for your listening pleasure, here are the LetterBros.
Welcome back, everybody, to LetterBros, where we watch the 100 best movies and let a wheel decide what we watch next. As always, I am Felix, and I'm joined by my buddy Parker. How we doing today, dude?
Dude.
Yeah, me too.
I am fucking ready to talk about this movie.
Same here. I'll start this off with, this movie was a commitment. Like, I felt like I had to like take off half the day to watch this movie, almost, just because this is literally the longest movie we have watched since starting this.
I feel like this movie added years to my life and took years off my life at the same time.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that makes sense, but yeah, watching it is a fucking trip. It is a trip. We're going to get into it, but I mean, yeah, let me just not even say anything. Let's just dive right into the quick facts, lay some quick groundwork, and then let's just fucking drop an F-bomb left and right, but go right in.
I feel like why don't we start with a synopsis of this movie?
Well, okay, so I have it written here that there's really no way to summarize this film. I think that we should probably just when it comes to the plot, we should just kind of dive into it. But to lay a little bit of the groundwork, we are talking today about Love Exposure, which is a nearly 4-hour Japanese film that's directed by Sion Sono. It premiered originally in 2007, but it seems that there's been a lot of premieres and releases since then, in the States, so on and so forth. As I said, there's really no point in trying to summarize the plot here. There's so much that's going on. We follow a lot of storylines, but the film's three main stars are Hikari Mitsushima as Yoko, Takahiro Nishikima as Yu, and Sakura Ando as Ayakayoki. On Letterboxd, this film has a 4.4 out of 5 stars, and it's currently it's sitting at the number 77 film on the top 100 list. I think that this is the goofiest and the most complex, and this movie carries both the goofiest themes of any movie we've seen yet and the heaviest themes of every movie that we've seen yet. And it just moshes it all together as a fuck you to life and just basically makes your head explode with its surrealism and absolute disregard for fucking like
anything.
and it's not like it's not similar to Everything Everywhere All at Once where you actually have visual surrealism. It's just so absurd. Like this, I think absurd is the best way to describe this movie if I had to in one word. But also it's heavy. It's super layered. There are so many layers going on in this film. And a mostly justified 4-hour runtime. I think this movie was a blast, and it's going to hit a 10 in a category absolutely that we're going to discuss.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm just excited to dive into it. There's so much to talk about in this movie. And I want to say thank you. I want to give a personal thank you to the almighty Wheel for giving us such an intimate, close-knit storyline with scenes from a marriage, and then just coming in and ramming us up the behind with the most layered, sophisticated, multi-character drama that we have seen yet. I mean, it was a major switch up. So the Wheel is keeping it coming. It
really is, dude.
It's a good DJ.
But what I would say just about this movie, that yes, this has been the most not even bizarre movie that I've seen, like doing this list. It's one of the most bizarre movies I've ever seen.
Ever.
And I kept harkening back to like Everything Everywhere All at Once. Like, funny that you mentioned that. Like, it's not really a comparison because Everything Everywhere, it's kind of like its own thing, but so like the kind of bonkersness and like the humor in it, I could see a little bit of in this movie, but this movie takes it to like a whole nother level. And I would say, like, I've never seen such a tighter script in a film in a very long time, and we'll dive into that a little more. But just like, I've left questions unanswered, and then throughout the 4-hour runtime you get questions answered, and it's absolutely nuts.
Yeah, you for the most part always have something else to look forward to during the course of the runtime.
Yeah,
something that you know is coming, and then they reveal it in a way that was even more ridiculous and magnificent than you could have expected.
Correct.
So I have our show notes they're broken down into the different chapters of this film, because again, we do have a film that approaches it from a title card, so to speak, standpoint, which kind of works and kind of doesn't for this movie, but it helps us for breaking it down. So
I'm reading through these fucking notes.
Yeah.
Your direct quote.
For our listeners, we're going to say some things, if you have not seen this movie, that are going to make you rewind and be like, did I just hear that right?
Yeah,
like, did I actually say that?
Let's preface this with bigs. I don't think I would ever give such a bigger spoiler warning than for this movie. Like, both me and Parker went into this solely with like the synopsis on Letterboxd, and I kind of wish we didn't even get that. I wish we would have dived into this movie with absolutely nothing.
Like, be aware, some of the themes are fucking heavy, like gross, like disgusting. Okay, so before we dive into it, spoilers, and if you don't want to get into the perversion of life, then well, hopefully not everyone's life, but
don't get angry that we sent you to this movie.
Yeah, okay.
We didn't make this movie.
It's definitely not for everyone.
It's not, but honestly, if you are over that stuff, you're in for a very good time with this movie. But let's dive into it. So Act 1 sees us with you. It's a pretty soft soft opening. It's just, we're here with you, who is the narrator for the entire movie for the most part, but we're just introduced to him and his family. They're very religious. They're devout Catholics. And after Yu's mom dies, his father, Tetsu, becomes a pastor for the church that I guess that it's the one that they were attending, or it was a new church that they needed a pastor, but like his dad becomes a pastor. And I mean, he's devoting himself to God, and he just wants to make his dad happy. And he's saying that like everything is all good up until this one person shows up at the church, and her name is Kaori Fujiwara, played by Makiko Watanabe, who is kind of a drifter. She comes into the church and she's pretty much just sobbing her face off. Like she is over emotional, just talking about how she never knew what Jesus was and all this other stuff, and how she really wants Tetsu to teach her about the Lord, to a point where she starts falling madly in love with Tetsu. And obviously, due to his, pastorship, he cannot marry so as long as he is a priest. Yes, sir.
It's not really a slow roll. I mean, she full on meets him out in a field, tackles him, starts
I was
dry
being
humping
nice.
him, and then starts making out with him, and boom, all of a sudden, this priest is in love. And you did skip over, if I may, before Yu's mom dies, she has a conversation with him, and she tells him, "I'm going on a trip soon. Here is a statue of the Virgin Mary. When you find your Virgin Mary, when you find your Maria, I want you to introduce me to her." And this is when Yu is very young. Okay.
Mhm.
So he has this already established. He is set out to find his Maria, so to speak. His
Yeah, this
one
has
true
become
love.
his life goal, pretty
Mhm.
much.
So yeah, moving on with their relationship, the priest Tetsu, Yu's dad, and his newfound love, so to speak.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, it's just there's so like this movie is so long and it has so much jam packed into it, but like I promise it's very good.
It's
Um
so it's so dense.
what sorry, I'm just reading through Parker's notes and one says one day some crazy bitch be crying in the pew.
It's true. So
It's really
this is the first
she
time
is
that we meet
insane.
the first time that we meet Kaori. She's just bawling while the priest Tetsu is giving his sermon, and he's kind of side-eyeing her like, "Oh, okay, who is this?" And they go into confessional, and she confesses to him that she's in love. She's in love with him. And as you were getting to, Felix, he eventually kind of runs away. As he's a Catholic priest, he's not allowed to marry, and obviously, by proxy, cannot have sex or cannot be in any kind of relationship
Mhm.
outside of the church.
They do go into hiding. Like they literally buy a whole house to just keep him in hiding. And obviously, Kaori is not about that. She does not want to be kept in hiding anymore. They want to go public, but obviously, he says no, which then in turn causes Kaori to leave. And this changes Tetsu's perspective completely. Whereas, you even mentions it that like he is a beloved priest, like his sermons are always very warm and comforting and inviting, and then after Kaori leaves they become completely different. They start talking and he asks you to come to confessional, and it's there where he says tell me your sins, and you's like I don't have any sins, I haven't really done anything, and he's like you're lying to me, tell me what sins you've committed. This puts a light bulb in Yu's brain that like in order to have a connection with my father, I need to sin so I can confess my sins to my father for him to love me. It's
Yeah,
bonkers.
and honestly, up until this point, the movie is kind of normal, like for the
It's
most part.
very normal.
I know because we read the synopsis on Letterboxd that we're getting into kind of a zany little adventure down the line, but yes, up until this point, it's not the absurd thing that it becomes. And at this point, Yu's father has completely abandoned him. He is living at the church and he says, "Here, you take the house. You live here at the house." And he will only talk to him in confessional. And as you said, use kicking basketballs away from or soccer balls away from kids. You know,
Was so funny.
trying to find these small things. He's stepping on ants so that he can say in confessional that he's killed someone or killed an ant. And so none of this is really good. Okay. You is pretty much always just being the Lord forgives you. The Lord forgives you. The Lord forgives you.
Yeah.
And he's getting nowhere in his relationship with his dad. So his mom has died. He cannot find his Maria, and his dad will no longer talk to him. So Yu is on his way back to his house, his solo residence at this point, and he runs into two guys who are kind of robbing a vending machine, is what it looks like, and he just joins in and starts trying to break it as well. And they just become fast friends. So this is when he runs into Yuji, who's played by Yutaka Shimizu, Takahiro, who's played by Haruyuki Onu, and as well as Senpai, played by Tasuku Nagaoka.
There you go. If you want to know if your friends are real friends, these guys are real friends to you throughout the whole movie. Like they have his back 100%.
And
I really liked their relationship. I just thought it was very wholesome.
wholesome in all the wrong ways.
Oh yeah, but I mean after everything that's happened in this movie, like there's a point where it's like when they come back and they're like there to just support you and whatever has happened to him. I was just like, "You know what? Those guys are really good friends."
And they introduced him to some panty photo master, and they go to a temple, and you learns the art of taking upskirt photos. And this is where the movie kind of turns into its realm of absurdity.
Yeah.
So they study at this temple, and Yu really takes it up because I think it was Senpai that convinced him that this will really get his dad to, talk to him. Because if there's one thing that gets a rise out of Catholic priests, it's perverted behavior. So Yu's like, okay, this is my chance to to get my relationship back with my dad is by taking upskirt panty photos. So he's learning essentially kung fu and doing all these crazy cartwheel flips and spins in order to get the perfect upskirt shot.
Dude,
And
the choreography and the weapons they use are some of the craziest things I've ever seen.
at
Like they
one
got a
point,
dude
and the camera snapshot sounds are hilarious. Hilarious.
They're
So
they're
they'll be in a
cartoony.
yard with a rope with a camera tied to either end of the rope, swinging it, click, pulling it back, swing, boom, behind upskirt photo, bring it back. And did you find the art of it, whatever it's called?
Yeah, it's called Totsatsu, the art of stealing with a photo.
Yes.
There's like a nunchuck camera.
Uh-huh.
There's a
And this,
whole bunch of
like,
crazy things, but like that's the thing, the choreography with the silly premise is so tight and so good.
and hilarious. Like
And
it's
it's
frankly
amazing.
so funny. Just
That
you
was the
can't help
point
but
where I
laugh at the
literally like
absurdity.
stopped taking notes for a while and I had to rewind the movie to be like, all right, I gotta take down what I just saw because like it's so funny. But so now Yu has become this like guru, like he is just going around downtown. He's, driving little RC cars with a camera at the top of
Oh my
it.
gosh. There is one scene in which, sorry to interrupt, but there's
No,
a
please.
line of women that are walking down a bridge, and then the camera just switches and you see all the women like this. And the RC car just goes between all their legs, and you just hear click, 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 and they all turn and go. And it's
Dude,
just
but they're
fucking hilarious. It's
their
so
dialogue is so funny because like I think it's two of the other students are just like fighting on this tiny bridge and they're literally saying like, oh no, these guys are fighting, we have to go to one side of the bridge and it's really tight, so we have to go. Like this is dialogue from the movie from these ladies. Like it's
Mhm.
so batshit crazy, it's so funny.
Anyway, we should know what gets Yu's friends to join him in this because there is a scene in which he is outside the church and there are three other girls that are walking
Oh
by.
yeah.
So it's pouring rain, which is just absurd again. It's literally downpouring, and there's these three girls, schoolgirls, that are just walking outside of the church. And Yu goes and takes a photo up one of their skirts, and he gets caught. And it's like, oh shit moment. Like, how did this guy not get caught? This is where, unbeknownst to us, really, we meet Aya Kaioki, and she introduces herself. We don't really know who she is at this point, but she forgives him because he says, Yu explains that he's only doing it because it's his original sin. And he is only doing it for sin. He's not doing it, as he would say, to get a hard on. It literally what he would say. He's doing it because he just loves sin. And she thinks it's charming, so to speak, and that the Lord will forgive him. And so she forgives him. She says, if he'll forgive you, then why can't I? And Yu's friends are watching from a distance, and they are so moved by this interaction that they choose to join him, and they graduate from shoplifting and robbing into taking upskirt photos with you, because
Yeah.
it's apparently the new thing for them to do. So now we have a whole club of upskirt panty photo takers.
Which Aya becomes very interested in early on. That like it's pretty much every scene that we see Yu training his friends, her and her two little buddies are there filming and watching all of this unfold. To which that's the part where I was like, what purpose is this girl serving? Which gets answered. But
Yeah,
um,
let's hold on to that because
yeah, that's why I'm like, I don't. So we'll stick with Act One because now all of his friends are involved in this little club that they got going on so much that they're placing bets on each other of who has the better picture. You know, they're all sitting around in their room or whatever, and they start betting on like, oh, I bet I have the best picture. And you goes, all right, if I lose and you have the better picture, I will dress up in drag and go kiss my crush or the prettiest woman I can find and tell them I love them.
which is not what he wanted to do originally. They say you says I'll dress up in his friend's sister's clothing and go walk around downtown. And they
Yeah.
say that's not enough. You have to kiss a girl on the street too. And you says, but you know that I won't kiss someone unless it's my Maria. And
Yeah.
he doesn't want to do that unless because he's saving himself. And he's never been attracted to any girl and because he hasn't found his Maria yet.
Yeah, so he loses. So now he has to go dress up in drag. I love to use drag. I thought it was fantastic. Of like he was kind of going for like a little goth look with like the big brimmed black hat, a long black dress, long hair. Like he was rocking this look. Part of the bet is that he has to say I love you in a very flamboyant accent or a very flamboyant tone of voice, which plays a heavy part into the plot of this movie
Mm-hmm.
because then they go out into the street where they see this girl who we're introduced to at this point as Yoko. At this point, Yoko kind of ran away from Kaori and she like runs into this like group of thugs. Like they're all just guys who are just like picking a fight with this girl and she's like I can take you all on and Yu doesn't like seeing that so he wants to join in and help this girl out and it's here where he gets a glimpse of her and it creates this very wild imagery that clicks into his brain that he has finally found his Maria, like to the point where it's literally like a picture of the Virgin Mary statue and they conveniently put a cloth over Yoko's head to like kind of look like a veil and like just the imagery is insane, all for just a moment to say I have found the love of my life.
And all this time, these men are chanting in unison. So it's about to be a big brawl between Yoko and a bunch of men that are just chanting, come on, let's fight. Meanwhile, Aya Kaioki, the girl who has forgiven you, is there in the background, of course, as she has been this whole time, cheering for this to really go down. So the fight starts, and this serves as such a massive shifting point in the movie. And we stick with this fight for, I think, 30 or 40 minutes because we keep getting taken back in time. He realizes it's Maria, and then boom, we're 58 minutes in, Felix, and across the screen comes Love Exposure, the title card, the title card of the movie. An hour in,
Dude, it was
and then
great.
we open right back into boom. We now have a new narrator. No longer is you the one that's speaking directly to the audience, but it's chapter 2. Kaioki. Her name is Aya Kaioki. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
She's a bad bitch. She has 17 professions. Among them, she is a coke dealer, a trader of illegal, overpriced religious artifacts. Oh, and not to mention, she's the regional leader of the Church of Zero, a cult that was very briefly mentioned earlier in the film. And we get taken now into her past. She also was the daughter, not son, but the daughter of an abusive priest father who beat her for sexual related sins and was all around just a shitty dad. Okay.
Yeah.
She comes home one day and her dad has had a stroke. And the funny thing is, he's got a heart on and he's basically dead. So she snaps his dick in half and then cuts it off to make it look like an accident. She also murders some high school kid and just walks out of the living room covered in blood, swinging a box cutter. She's lost on the street. She's then found by the leader of the Church of Zero, who brings her in to this cult. So yeah, we get introduced to Aya Kaioki in a big way. And we now have a little bit more of a background as to who this character is that's been following you throughout the first hour of the movie.
Which doesn't like again, we get the backstory of her and we just find out that again, like she is this crazy person who also during that flashback is kind of giving us like her master plan. Her plan is to convert Yu and his family. That like if we can convert this priest into the Church of Zero, then all of his followers will follow him into the Church of Zero. So that's the part that we get, but you don't really hear a lot of that progress. Because again, all you see is just, all right, we know this girl is crazy. She cut her dad's dick off. And now she's just going around filming this boy that she just met. Like that's all you get from her. But then
and there is
yes.
kind of I want to add an uncanny similarity between the upbringing of Yu and of Ayakaoki. And she even is told by the leader of the Church of Zero that she is able to detect original sin. And this rings a bell because this is exactly what you said to her. It's my original sin. Way back when he was trying to take a photo up her skirt. So they also have this kind of ethereal connection. They're
that
both,
she can detect original sin, and that's something that she detected.
And they are both original sinners. So yeah, we kind of have this correlation between now, dare I say, our two main characters.
Yeah.
And then boom, we get a third main character.
Yeah.
And
right off the bat.
From the mouth of Ayakaoki, she says to end this chapter, which I love some of the transitions. She goes, Yoko, it's your turn. Cut to chapter 3, Yoko.
Yeah, that was awesome.
So, dude, I got chills. I'm like, we are fucking in for a ride now. Strap in. We're at the top of the lift hill. Like, this shit's going fast.
Yeah, because, oh boy, Yoko's chapter is a freaking ride for sure.
Take us through it.
So, just when you thought you couldn't get any worse of a dad than Kaoki, we then meet Yoko's dad, who is just an awful person. Like, her dad was pretty much a man whore. He's bringing in women left and right from wherever, one of them actually being Kaori. This leads to her like not liking men. Like she says repeatedly that men are the enemy, men are my enemy. And then it's like, okay, I mean, like that's just, he's just a man whore. But then we get the reasoning why she truly hates men, and it's because her dad, I guess, tried to like rape her when she was a kid. And obviously was not successful. She was able to fight him off. But like as this is going, like we just keep hearing this like chant over and over, like men are my enemy, men are my enemy, to where she learns to fight, she learns how to defend herself, and pretty much is just off of the idea of having a family because it's never worked out for her.
It's literally her pastime to go out into the street and beat up men.
Correct. Like she just finds 3 men in the street and just beats the living shit out of them. It's nuts. But what a backstory. And there's sorry, I'm looking through your notes here. That there was the school shooting scene.
Yes.
Yeah, like at first I thought this was Kaoki or Kaori.
No.
At first I thought it was, because I mean, from the last act, you see this girl swinging a knife around, doing whatever, and now I'm like, oh crap, she has a gun now. But even just like this shot of like, go.
So Yoko is not the one doing the school shooting. So what kind of
I know she's not.
To bring us to this point is, it's weird the way that it's phrased in the movie, because Yoko's dad is always bringing home Yoko's mom of the day, essentially, and he even says that to her. I bring you all these mothers so that you can have love, so that you can have motherhood love. One day, and Yoko's dad walks in, and it's Kaori, and she is the mother of the day. And we're like, oh shit, like that's the woman that Yu's father, the priest, was just in love with. So Kaori gets bored essentially with Yoko's dad, as she does, because she also hops around from man to man. And since, this is after she was with Tetsu, so she has since come to Christianity. And essentially, Yoko and Kaori run away together as friends. And they're standing in a nightclub just dancing. And on the television is news about a school shooting that had taken place. And we jump into the school shooting. It's fucking horrifying, like brutally violent, inside of a classroom. And we see an image of Yoko just standing there, surrounded by all of these bloodied bodies, and the school shooter aims and shoots a bullet, and it brings us into this incredible sequence in which Yoko is saying, there are bullets that are flying around us all the time at any given time. And she's walking through these various settings as bullets are flying by her and everybody else that's a bystander. And that kind of serves as a transition into her background, which we've already discussed. So the school shooter fires, and it brings us into this incredible sequence where the bullet slows down, goes by Yoko, and she starts narrating to us now that there's bullets flying all around us at any given time. There's bullets, and she's the only one that can see them. And that is actually what brings us narratively into her flashbacks of her past about her dad.
You've gotten like that point across, that like she sees things that other people don't, that like she sees these obstacles that normally people would not be able to avoid, but because she can see them, she is able to avoid them. Like, I'd say one of the obstacles being like attached to a family, because she wants to cut all that out. Having a mother is an obstacle that she doesn't want. It's a bullet in her life that she is able to avoid. So I think like that's the kind of aspect that you're going for, is that like she is able to see things that would hinder most people from living their life, but she can see them. So in that aspect, she's able to avoid them.
Yeah. Also, mostly though, I just thought it looked cool. Like the sequence
Oh
looked
yeah,
really,
it looked fantastic.
really
Like the
nice.
giant, like cartoony looking bullet, like going like past her face. Like, no, the imagery in this movie is spectacular. Like it's top notch stuff.
All this to say that we meet Yoko now, and we now
Wait,
have,
so who were so she hates all men, correct?
except for Kurt Cobain
And
and Jesus.
Jesus.
But she learns, she at first she only likes Kurt Cobain, and then she realizes that Jesus is just as cool, if not cooler, than Kurt Cobain.
Yeah, Kaori
So
convinces her that like, oh, have you ever heard of Jesus? No. Oh, well, I think he might be cooler than Kurt Cobain. And she says, that's impossible. There's no one cooler than Kurt Cobain.
So yeah, we've now met our three main characters. And dude, I have a note that it just says this movie is told in ninth person omniscient, which growing up in school,
Excuse me?
you always hear, the third person, the first person, and the third person omniscient, in which you can hear the thoughts of, some of the characters. I
Yeah.
don't know, literature,
No,
English class, whatever.
I
But
know.
there's so many thoughts and main character narrations that are going on throughout the film. It's a lot to follow. You kind of need a cork board.
Yeah. It's like literally like having the little red lines drawn out of like who's saying what. This is who's talking. This is what her problem is, what his problem is. But essentially, like tying it almost all like, and I don't want to go like over your notes that much, but this is where we then get introduced to the almost kind of fourth main character, which is Miss Scorpion,
Yeah.
which is
So
the name of
what?
Yu's drag persona.
Yeah. So this chapter ends with us back in the fight, we should say. So we're back to this fight that has served as a plot point for
Yeah.
the introduction of all these characters.
How long would you say those two acts were put together to be, like, to get
Like
us
30,
back to?
like 30 minutes between, like,
Yeah, like 15 minutes per person, pretty much. So, like, a pretty extensive description of these other two characters that we have just met, just to give you enough of an idea to realize, okay, this is what this person's motives are. This is what their backstory was. Okay, let's jump back into the present. Like, even on
yes.
your notes, it says the timeline gets quite jumpy, but it has a payoff. Like, yes, it takes you out of that fight, which again, choreographed very well. Like, you're into this now. I'm like, oh my god, these fights are going crazy, and now you're pulled back to be like, wait a minute, let's talk about this person and this person. Okay, now let's put you back in the fight, and it does
Yes.
it
No.
seamlessly.
And now we're back at chapter 4. And I have in my notes too, this is an hour and a half in. We got the title card at 58 minutes. So yeah, it took about half an
So
hour.
good.
So chapter 4, Miss Scorpion. And this is the longest chapter by far of the movie. Essentially, the rest of the movie takes place in this chapter until we get to that.
So again, the fight finishes, and obviously Miss Scorpion, or Yu, has to finish the bet. Yu kisses Yoko as Miss Scorpion because obviously, like, there's not that correlation. So Yoko falls in love with Miss Scorpion, which then kind of dives into another sort of subplot of like, what is my, like, it dives a lot into religion, this movie does. And ends up with her like going back home to like eat with Kaori, because obviously at this point, like you said, Kaori is a devout Christian. She is all about the Lord, and she starts to ask, like, is it against the Lord to be a lesbian? And she's like, absolutely it is. Like, that's like the most perverse you could be as a lesbian. So it kind of dives into themes like that, where, you know, you're kind of conflicted as to like, you want to please this. I'm going to call her a mother figure, because as much as she doesn't want to say it, Kaori is serving like she wants to be a mother figure to this person, while also balancing the line of being a friend. But it's like, do you want to do what you want to do to make your mother figure happy, or do you want to be you? Do you want to follow your feelings no matter if it is a sin or not? So
Yeah, and
kind of
Kaori says this while she's going and hooking up with every single man on the planet of the Earth. Okay.
correct. Yeah.
So we should mention, though, the one man that brought her back and put Yoko in the position to be in this fight in the first place. And that's because Kaori wanted to bring Yoko with her to meet Tetsu, Yu's father, the
Yeah.
man that she has all of a sudden fallen back in love with. And we also hear Tetsu say to Yu, there's someone I want you to meet.
Yeah, because at this point, Tetsu has now almost completely changed. Like up until like, I know what scene you're talking about, where like Yu comes back home, Tetsu is like cooking dinner, and it's like he's almost a different character from what we've seen so far. As like, you know, being very cold, like even like kind of tracking back, he slaps the dog shit out of you in church after he finds out about the sneaky photos. Like it takes him off so much that he starts beating his own son in church. And that's the last scene that we see of Tetsu. But now we come back and Tetsu's cooking dinner. He's like, oh, hey, you, good to see you. By the way, we're meeting someone tonight. So it's
Yeah.
very jarring.
So, yes, now we have a love triangle between only two people, which is so hilarious and fun to follow because while Yu is in love with Yoko, Yoko is in love with Miss Scorpion and hates Yu, who happen to be the same person. So, not only have they met on the street, but because Yoko has moved now again to a new city with Kaori, she's also at Yu's school and they happen to sit right next to each other in class. So Yoko finds Yu to be repulsive, kind of a pervert. He's always staring at her. He's getting erections randomly. And we should mention that this is what makes you know that he's found his Maria, is that he can get a hard on. At one point, there's a direct quote from Yu that says, I must find Maria and get a hard on. And he realizes this because none of his panty photos have given him a hard on. And all of a sudden, he's sitting next to his Maria in class and he doesn't know what to do. So she is giggly and super excited about this woman that she met, Miss Scorpion. And Yu is trying to find a way that he can let her know that he is her and that really she's in love with him. And not only are they in the same town, Felix, and not only are they classmates, but now they're brother and sister.
Yeah, that like when they get to the restaurant and you just see Yoko's face just go from like, you know, kind of being happy she's putting a face to just being an instant just disgust of this human being, to where she asks to use the bathroom. She calls Miss Scorpion, because at this point Miss Scorpion had given her a phone number, and now it's kind of tough to watch where she's talking to Miss Scorpion about how much she hates you, and you is the person on the other line of the phone.
But it's
to
so
where
good.
But this does set him up to where, you know, she's continuing to talk about how much she doesn't like you, but you as Miss Scorpion goes, you know, you have to do what you can to be nice to him, like make him like try to be a member of this family, to like kind of please you. Now she's like waking up you every morning. She's being friendly towards him, all because Miss Scorpion told her that she needs to do that.
That she
So
needs to
she's
try.
bending to the will of this woman because she's just madly in love with Miss Scorpion, even going as far as, you know, wanting to be nice to this person who just only, one, is an enemy because he's a man, and two, that she's just disgusted with because
He's a
I mean, at
perv.
But I don't see how she would think that because she doesn't even know what he actually does yet.
No, but he's still acting like a perv. Like he's stalking
Like he's
her
just
kind
being
of.
weird.
He will like hide behind a fence and then go hi. And
Cringe.
oh my god.
He's a
So much
cringe lord, dude.
mad props to the actor that plays you because he has the funniest fucking like shit-eating grin like smile where his lips go so wide. Like
But
it's so funny. And
yeah, he does comedy very well. But
I want to bring it
where
back
are
a
we
little
in
bit.
this movie?
Huh?
I'm said, where are we in this movie? We just talked about the restaurant scene, and there's like a
Well,
couple scenes of them like being nice to each other.
Well, we're gonna get to a big scene, and I will say that this takes up a little while. This kind of cat and mouse game between you and Miss Scorpion and Yoko, and it takes a bit of time, and it kind of slows down the pace because from I would say the 45th minute until the hour and a half mark, this movie moves at breakneck pace, and then it really kind of hits the brakes a little bit and lets us simmer in the awkward situation that it has since created. But I
Mhm.
want to say that I want to back up a little bit because during the first hour of the movie, we get little mini title cards that say 365 days to the miracle,
Yeah.
265 days to the miracle, 100 days to the miracle, 3 minutes to the miracle. And it does a really good job of keeping you engaged because you don't know what the miracle is going to be. The miracle ends up being him realizing that Yoko is his Maria. And once we have that revelation, there is still the ever present Aya Kaioki lurking in the backgrounds that is still giving us something to look forward to plot wise. And this is where we get to, I think, my favorite scene of the entire movie. So this brings us into our probably my favorite scene in the entire movie because for the past 45 minutes would you say we kind of have this suspicion as to what Aya Kaioki's character is going to do to unveil and get her grand plan in motion because we know that she's trying to convert the family here. So boom, all of a sudden, not only do we have a new student in Yoko, we now have Aya Kaioki joining their class, and she walks in, and I'm like, oh shit, something's about to go down. She says, I want to
Yeah.
sit there right between Yoko and you. She sits down, and all of a sudden, and we see this the night before, I should say, there's a
Yeah.
cut where she says, am I breaking out up again?
No. I'm replying to what you're saying.
Oh yeah. She says to this group of people, tomorrow is very important, and they all have box cutters. Okay, so that's all we really have. She sits down in the classroom. She smiles at you, and you's like, "What the fuck is this bitch up to? What's going on?"
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, boom! These guys start somersaulting through the entire wall of the classroom, and I'm like, "What the fuck is going on?" These guys literally just tear down an entire wall and start busting out into combat.
They
And they're
literally
like,
like the whole pane of the wall just falls over. It's so good.
and they say, where is Miss Scorpion? We're here to beat up Miss Scorpion. We're here for revenge. And I'm like, oh shit, it's all coming together. You, for a split second, you stands up and he goes, I'm Miss Scorpion, as about to say, I'm Miss Scorpion, gets shoved out of the way by Aya Kaioki, who says, I'm a Miss Scorpion. So she just literally hijacked his alter ego and starts beating up these men alongside Yoko. And Yoko is like, I found her. I found Miss Scorpion, and she's has this mind-blowing moment, and you was just off there watching as literally all of his dreams crumble and collapse. And it was such an incredible twist, I guess you could call it. And I'm just sitting there like, wow, what more does this movie have up its sleeve? And this, I think, was the biggest reveal, La Reveal Magnifico, one could say. But oh my gosh, dude. My mouth was just hanging open. I was jaw dropped. This it was
This
one of
was
the most
obviously like
incredible buildups and payoffs that I've seen in a movie.
yeah, because up until this point, you're like, okay, finally, this is how you is going to reveal that he's Miss Scorpion. He's gonna champion. He's gonna get his Maria, and it's just like, fuck no,
Right?
I'm Miss Scorpion.
You almost think Aya Kaioki's doing it to help him so that he has the opportunity to stand up and say, I am her.
Yeah,
Nope.
hell no.
Rug out.
Yeah, this that it was at that point where I'm like, all right, like
that she's got some other shit planned for her grandmaster plan. Because I mean, up until that point, like I almost forgot about her plan because we're already so
Yeah.
far into this movie that I'm like, oh, this girl's just trying to be mean. Like she's just trying to ruin this kid's life, which she eventually does because now she's Miss Scorpion in Yoko's eyes. So now she's obviously like, I found the person I've loved. They get to making out straight away.
Like
And it's
biting
it's
each
a
other's
little
tongue.
yeah, it was like they're like biting each other's tongue. It was really weird. But it then gets to the point where their friendship starts to develop and it bleeds into the home as now Aya is now tutoring Yoko and now is coming to the house every single day.
He's literally counseling them, the parents.
She it does get to a point where she's literally counseling these people's marriage, and there's a funny shot of when it's Yoko and Aya both in the room, and like you can kind of see like their underwear, and like Yu's eyes go like straight to Yoko's, but then the camera turns towards Aya, and Aya's just like presenting herself because we also like
Are
there's a
you
line
talking
that she
about the
says
jump scare?
the jump scare.
Well, there's a moment in which you think Yoko is waking up you like she
Oh, no,
did
no, no,
in
no,
the
no,
past.
that's
Okay.
farther out, that's farther
Okay.
out. No, this was early on when they're, like, doing the tutoring, and it's just, like, a scene that kind of
Yeah.
just shows, like because Aya also continues to tell you that I'm very interested in you. I'm showing interest in you. That like you're starting to think that like this is kind of becoming a love triangle where it's like you wants Yoko, Yoko wants Aya, but Aya wants you.
Mhm.
But like it's not like that. Like that's just how she's presenting it.
Right.
Like Aya's the in my opinion the best character in this movie. Like she has so many dimensions to her to where we thought she was just this random girl recording everything with a little freaking bird on a string, which again, that bird is very important to Aya because that bird was in the room during one of her biggest like trials with her dad, where he started just like whipping her and said, just keep repeating, give it to me, give it to me. And the bird is there in the room as it's happening. And this is a line that she repeats every so often in the movie too, which in Japanese, I guess, is just give it to me.
Yeah.
Which I thought was really interesting. But this is something that we continue to see throughout Aya. That, like she had such a shitty life, and that the Church of Zero has given her such life that like she wants to convert people to this church, but in like the most messed up and convoluted ways possible. Which
Just
the church isn't necessarily that great either. But we'll get more into that. But Aya has now wedged herself into this family. Like she is doing exactly what she has been planning to do and make herself a part of this family. And all it's going to take is just one turning point to turn this family completely onto Aya's side. And I would like Parker to go into what exactly that turning point is.
yes. So to your point, this character is a powerhouse, Aya Kaoki. She always has something up her sleeves, and she is a maniacal mastermind. And exactly what you were saying, she has manipulated her way into the family. Yes. And to your point, we're kind of questioning, is she going also to try and convert you? Is she what is she going to do to either turn everyone against him or bring you into the fold? She opts to turn everyone against him. In class, when he arrives to find out that all of his prized panty photos have been distributed to the masses, he is the world's official biggest pervert. And he's immediately expelled from school, beat by his dad. Just Yoko is disgusted. Everyone is disgusted. Except his boys.
That's where I'm like, dude, these guys are his fucking boys, dude. These guys are gonna stick by you no matter what. And I was like, I fuck with these guys, dude. They're so good. But he doesn't help his situation either because during that confrontation with the family, he pretty much like gets on top of Yoko and is just like, I love you. I love you. Like you want to root for him so much, but then he does stupid shit like this, and it's just like
he does some pervy. Besides the panty photos, he does some pervy
Which he
stalker
kept
thing.
under his bed in a big red bag,
Yeah.
by the way, like, not inconspicuous. Like, I found them literally immediately, and it's just a big red bag under his bed.
We did, however, skip over a very important plot point, of which that there are so many, and
It's going to happen, dude. It's this movie so
yeah, just real
much.
quick, like there is so much that happens. Like all we can really do is implore you, like obviously too late, we've already talked about it, but put something at the beginning of this episode, Felix. Like, stop, go watch this fucking movie. No way we're gonna be able to hit everything.
Marty.
But yeah, there was a point in which you calls Yoko and says, "Come meet me in the park" as Miss Scorpion. And this is where we have a little bit of a fault in Aya Kaioki's plan, because
Uh-huh.
Yoko shows up in the park and she realizes, wait, this is the original Miss Scorpion. And the Miss Scorpion that I've been making out with definitely doesn't look the same. And you reveals to her that the real OG Miss Scorpion was really you. And Yoko just has a moment of complete dread and confusion, in which she basically just questions, like, what the fuck is my life right now? I've ran away with some woman my dad was sleeping with, who's now married me into a Catholic priest family, and my stepbrother is some woman that I've been in love with this whole time, who in reality disgusts me as a pervert that stalks me around class. So I just wanted to add that
Yeah.
that was a whole thing that happened just now as well. The character dynamics are continuously evolving, continuously shifting. And yes, and now you is the world's biggest pervert, and he's only got his friends to come to. And this is where Aya Kaioki's plan is essentially complete. She says, "This is your fault, Tetsu, that your son has become this way. You all need redemption. You need to come with me to the Church of Zero." And essentially, now Yoko, Tetsu, and Kaori are all official members now, too, of the Church of Zero. So now we've got the cult storyline on our hands.
Just when you thought this movie didn't have enough movies to deal with, now we have this whole other rescue mission that they like apparently get the police involved too, because this Church of Zero has now become very infamous in its status, to where there's now like tiers of people that like they get involved with. So there's like, I wish I had these written down, but
So the first level of the cult is caves, and they're the new members essentially. The actors are the second tier, and then the prompters, who are at the top.
yeah, so like a prompter would be Aya, who's obviously like she's prompting everybody and giving the lines to the actors of what they need to say to continue to be a part of the church. And the actors are the ones who have been converted from the cave, who go through this like extenuous process of being like, you know, turned into the cult. They go through an initiation process at like some camp or whatever, like, and they are talking to the cops, like you and his friends, about like what status is each person at. And they get to Yoko and says, "Oh, she's an actor," and they're like, "Oh, well, she's like impossible to save. Like, there's no redemption in her." And you know, you does not want to give up on Yoko, so he is going to do everything he can to get Yoko out of the Church of Zero. And boy, do they do that!
And we are getting ahead of ourselves a bit, because the priests also say, "Don't you work in the porn industry?" Which is a whole nother subplot that takes place,
dude.
in which Aya Kaioki comes to you, and there's a period of time that goes by where Yu has no contact. His father's not home. Yoko's nowhere to be found. And
He literally
come
comes to his home and it's empty.
And right. And they come to the conclusion, him and his group of friends, that they must have been abducted by the Church of Zero. So Aya Kaioki gets in contact and says, "You need to go work for Bukakeshi," I think it's called. She says, I have some people that are very interested in your skills. And this brings us to a super like weird and absurd but hilarious audition sequence. He gets a job as a filmographer for a new porn special of him taking upskirt photos. And there's a whole subplot in which the porn director tries to get you to poke, and he's like, "I will only shoot upskirt panties. I will not poke." And I mean, oh my gosh, dude, it just gets so absurd. So they say, okay, if you're not going to do any poking, then you have to go to this new like porn release event. And we cut to you in a confessional booth at a porn expo where all these people will go up to him and confess their sins, so to speak. And he just goes, I forgive you. I forgive you. And it is, from a plot point, kind of an interesting shift, because he's now become his father in a sense, and in the weirdest way possible. But I have it written down, some of the confessions that are made, one of which is very important. I like eating women's vomit. I forgive you. I like children. I'm a pedophile. I forgive you, he says. And then someone
that
comes
one
up,
I was like, yo, chill.
and then this guy comes in, he's like, I want to make a bomb and blow up a crowded place. And Yu's like, I forgive you. Wait, like, the guy's like, so I can do it? And he's like, no, well, I'll talk to you later. And so he prevents this whole porn expo from being exploded by this crazy maniac. But that's going to come back in the future of the plot, which, again, red lines everywhere, connecting everything. But go on now. Yes, they're going to break Yoko out of the Church of Zero. And as you said, boy, do they. So walk us through their whole escapade, because this is, again, a long part of the movie. And once they complete this plan.
Yeah, so it's up at this point now that during that event, the two ladies that have been with Aya the whole time bring like a little TV, and they bring it, and it's Yoko on the other line of it, pretty much just again going into like, I've been converted, you're a pervert, blah blah blah, like we like just come join the Church of Zero. And he's obviously not about that. He wants to convert Yoko. He wants to do everything he can to save her. He leaves that convention, and people are still trying to come up to him, and he's just like, no, get the hell away from me. Catch me if I'm getting ahead of myself, but they come up with a plan to convert Yoko back to reality, which involves them kidnapping Yoko. Like, they literally, I think is he in the Miss Scorpion outfit in that scene, or is he just himself?
It's him and his friends. I'm not sure if he is. I don't think I don't think he is.
No, I think he's just in like some regular clothes. Like, he's just in a really baggy like jacket.
Yeah, yep. The second time he goes back, which we'll get to, is when he's dressed as Miss Scorpion.
Yeah, but in that instance, yes, they pretty much kidnap Yoko. They put her into a van, and they just drive out to the beach. And this has now a new subplot of, can I say, like, it's almost like a little bit like a little Stockholm syndrome type scene, where it's just the two of them just in a bus, and they're just waiting shit out. Like, his friends come up and they're like, all right, like, are you guys good? No, are you hungry? Here's some food. All right, good luck, buddy. And they just leave him be on this bus on a beach and we just get, I want to say, like 20 minutes of just the two of them in a bus.
Yeah. It's honestly a little bit too long, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, that's where I also thought, I'm like, this went up. Like, I get what they're trying to do and kind of build that tension between the two of them.
They could have done so in a montage.
It does sort of pay off towards the end of that sequence, but I don't know. There was a lot of scenes without dialogue in a very action and dialogue heavy movie.
It is at this point in the movie where it doesn't reach its highs. This movie has a lot of great highs, and then once we get to this captivity standpoint, there's one more scene which we'll get to here shortly that is up there, but it doesn't really reach the excitement level that I had for it throughout the rest of the film.
This was a point in the movie where I was like, okay, what are we at? Oh shit, we're at 2 hours and 45 minutes into this movie, and we still have an hour left.
So I guess we could kind of move through it relatively quickly, the rest of the film. But yes, they're trying to outfast each other until eventually Yoko says, I'm uncomfortable. He unties her. She runs away. And then the rest of the Church of Zero pulls up basically and takes her back to the church. So he has essentially failed at his mission. He meets up with the man from the porn convention who was wanting to make a bomb. Do you recall?
Yes. So he does meet up with that person, which I thought was really funny that we brought him back because that was one of the funniest scenes in the movie. But I love how even just something like a joke like that becomes such an important part of the plot later, because now what he's going to do is he's going to infiltrate the Church of Zero and just try and rescue either just Yoko or, if he can, his entire family. But
And
this
also blow it
sequence
up.
and also blow it up. Yeah.
So he now has a
Big
bomb
important
with
part.
him, and this is where he's dressed as Miss Scorpion, and he also
Yeah.
has a katana,
So
and
good.
he starts murdering a bunch of people. And I will say, the suspense is building in a very like cinematic way in which he's slicing and dicing, and meanwhile Yoko, his father, Kaori, they're all having this meal of dumplings with each other in a very peaceful setting, and he's in a split screen just hacking bodies up. He gets into the main room after passing through a bunch of rooms with abandoned families who are clearly hungry and disillusioned. So we see that there's some real shady shit going on in this church.
Yeah.
He gets in there and he kills a couple of bodyguards, and then they kind of have him surrounded. So he sets off the bomb. And then Aya Kaioki kills herself by falling on her sword.
Well, because it's at that point that, like, you know, she is seeing him just go batshit crazy, and it's even getting to the point where Yoko is attempting to kill you. And I feel like, because she does it in a very specific way, she like performs where she, like, you know, stabs herself. It's almost like, either because they usually do that if they've like either like a samurai would do that if they've like done dishonor or like they've, you know, let somebody down. But
Seppuku.
she kind of does it in a way where it's like she feels like she's complete, or
Yeah,
that she has garnered as much pleasure from this experience as she possibly could, because her last words are also "give it to me."
And
So-
it is. She would have been brought into jail. That's the fall of the Church of Zero.
And something important in this scene that I didn't think of until later was, Yu at this point is dying. The love of his life is trying to choke him out and kill him. And you see blood on the side of his eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And at first I was like, well, when did he get cut in the face? I don't even remember that. But, you know, the scene plays out. Aya kills herself. The police take him away. Yu is manic at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Like he is not there anymore. Like, I wouldn't say, but he does blow up the building. That was probably the worst effect of the movie. I thought it looked so fake.
There were
But,
some
I mean,
big hits and punches in here too. So
Which
we're in
is now,
chapter
like,
5, the last chapter, as it's called.
to where now it's kind of wrapping up everything that's going on. We see that Tetsu and Kaori are kind of doing like a retreat together, like they're doing yoga together to kind of get over what happened. We see that Yoko has moved with her other family that we have not heard of until this point.
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing it's probably like family of her father or something, but like they have a good relationship. She has a good relationship with like the smaller daughter, who is talking about a boy that she's really into. And it's in, we also get shots of of Yu, who has now been admitted to an insane asylum where he only dresses up as Miss Scorpion, and that is who he is. He is just Miss Scorpion. Like, he's going around and hitting other people like with a plastic sword and just beating the shit out of them. But it's in this conversation that Yoko has with this little girl, who I did not get the name, I'm sorry, but she talks about a time where she cried so hard that her eyes bled. Yoko's like, well, what are you talking about? And she said, you know, I mean, your tear ducts are blood vessels. So, I mean, I just cried so hard that that blood vessel popped and I started crying blood. To which it then cuts back to that scene of Yoko choking Yu, and you have that blood coming down his eye, which I was like, just the script is so tight. I love it.
Yeah, I'm glad it worked for you. I thought I could have taken it or left it personally.
I thought it was it was a nice callback to where now all of a sudden Yoko now cares about you.
Yeah, that is true. It is a good turning point.
Because at this point, like, she only sees him as a pervert, has no feelings whatsoever, but now it's like he's showing the literal most emotion you can give by literally making your tear ducts bleed that you're crying so hard. She then finds out where they're holding you. She goes in and he's dressed up completely as Miss Scorpion. And even when they talk, you does not like it's almost seeming like is like Miss Scorpion is meeting Yoko for the first time. So they're like talking, and he's talking with that, tone of voice that he's been using through all of their interactions together. She's just trying to pull him back to the point where it's now like Yoko's making you go crazy. Like they lock each other in a room and use like Yoko's like, wake up, like you are you, like I love you, which I mean, I'd probably go crazy too if all of this stuff happened because you had feelings for this woman and now she has feelings for you. So it's like it would make your brain explode too. But the police show up and they take Yoko away. They're like literally pulling her out of the room. She's screaming her face off in this scene, but somehow Yu is able to click it back and he's no longer Miss Scorpion. He is Yu. He literally takes off all of his like Miss Scorpion stuff, the glasses, the hat, the coat, and just bolts his way out of the building, running towards the police car. He catches up to it because like Yoko started to choke out the driver and made the car stop, and Yu starts banging the window with his elbow, like trying to get it in, and he gets it in. They hold hands, and the movie just fucking ends.
No, good ending. Good ending. What, like, fine.
I know. I'm saying it like just if the movie fucking it ends and it's incredible.
In a movie full of erections, it ends on a handshake. With that being said, I mean, should we just dive into our ratings?
I think we should, because I mean, we can talk about this movie forever, but yeah, let's dive into our ratings, starting with enjoyability and rewatchability.
All
right. So for enjoyability and rewatchability, I gave it a 12, mainly for the enjoyability part. Like I've enjoyed very much Lawrence of Arabia and High and Low. These have been movies that I have thoroughly enjoyed, but I feel like I would rewatch more of High and Low and like maybe Lawrence of Arabia if I feel like wanting to go back, because Lawrence of Arabia is shorter than this movie. But I loved the time that I felt watching this movie. But I don't know if I can recapture that feeling on a second watch just because of how bonkers this movie was. It's like the fun of it was expecting the unexpected. Like you never knew what was going to happen after after the next thing that popped up. So I would say that 12 is all pretty much like 90% the enjoyability, and the other numbers that take it off is rewatchability.
Yeah, so I agree with you in that is very enjoyable on a first watch. However, I will say that this is not one movie in which I think knowing all of the plot points will make it more fun on a second watch, because what made it so much fun the first time around is that you have no idea what to expect. So for that reason, I'm going to give it a 10 because it is such a great movie to watch one time, and I would revisit it just for its humor, because there's really no movie that's quite like this in terms of its nonsensical absurdity and humor. And in our recap, I guess you could call it, of this film, there are so many funny one-liners and random like weird shit that goes down that's just like hard to even bring up and explain because it's happening so often and it's so rapid fire. So the only reason I would rewatch it is for its comedic purpose. And there's other comedies I would put on that are a little easier to digest, really.
I would say like there's certain moments that I would like to rewatch, and that's probably something I can just look up on a YouTube video. Like the camera weapon scene, I would rewatch any day. That was like one of the funniest parts of the movie, but I don't want to have to watch 4 hours of a movie just to get that.
Yeah, I completely agree. So it's not one that I'd go back and really, I think I would pick up more upon a rewatch. That would make me go, oh, like that is what that means, because I feel as though it does a good job of explaining everything that it's referencing throughout its runtime. So yeah, I could go 11, I could go 9. I'm going 10. The story, Ooh, I mean, it's a really complex and very, very layered story. I I'm struggling. It's going to be a high score, and I'm trying to think if I want to give it a 12 or a 13. I'm going to give it a 13 because it is such a tight script, as you've said throughout this episode. It does have so many callbacks to things that happened in the past, and it handles so many storylines well and at the same time. And it bounces you between all these characters and gives you all their motives and does a good job of holding off on what information it's going to give you until these batshit crazy scenes happen. And those scenes are a lot of fun. I will say that there's probably some pacing issues in terms of the story, but in terms of the story that it's telling, it's really good. It's really good. Very well done.
So that's why I also gave it a 13, for just all the reasons that you mentioned, and that, there's movies out there that try to have these convoluted plot points, and that, a lot of them either will get answered, but then leave some to the wayside that we never get answers for. This movie answers every question that you have, and it does it in a very tight knit way and very like balanced way. Like I think the story is something that, while bonkers for sure, and some of it might not make absolute sense. You just have to turn your brain off and just say, well, this is a movie. This director had like it's I think you mentioned it in a previous episode where it's like you're wanting to like a movie is you peering into this director's brain, and we peered into this guy's brain and saw this story unfold, and where some of the like I thought the whole subplot about like the porn company could have not been there. Like I thought it was kind of just like a random detour. Like it was hilarious, it was really funny, but was it pivotal to the main story? I
Yeah.
Slightly, like with the bomb dude,
Yeah.
but like that's it.
And we also see the arc come kind of full circle with you being the one that's in confessional. So I
Yeah,
guess
and
there's
that
also
too.
that dynamic.
Yeah. Well, there are some things that could have been shorter. I think the story overall was very tight knit and it was very well done.
Mhm.
So, with lasting impression, I would say again, this is a movie where I feel this is probably one of the first movies where I feel like you said, a rewatch won't do it justice. I feel like this is a movie you need to watch one time and just go into it. And I'm sorry, I just wrote down my score. It's a 12 out of 15. So where this movie experience is going to sit with me for a while, for sure. Because I'll probably explain this to my brother and he'll be like, what is this? And now another person has been infected by this movie.
Yeah, this is one again. We always say this category is a little bit difficult, and maybe every 10 we can go back and revisit our lasting impression scores. I don't know. Thought
We
food for
got to
thought.
make it to 10, buddy.
I
We're,
know,
we're
but
almost there.
I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 15, a little more, a couple more than half, because it's going to stick with me purely because it's the weirdest fucking movie I've ever seen in my life. I think. Past that, I mean, I really enjoy the fact that they were able to balance themes of religion and theology with themes of like youthful perversion and sexual and physical abuse from the parental side, and the loss of a motherly figure in your life. And it balances so many themes so effectively that I will carry with me. But mostly whenever I refer to this movie, it's going to be like, that's the most batshit thing I've ever seen on a screen. I will say it's a fun movie to talk about because like
Oh yeah.
I feel like once you see it, you're kind of in on a joke that no one else is in on, because
Like,
not
but
a lot of people
we
have seen
can't
the movie. And
we can't tell the story. Like even just trying to get through it, we're missing a couple things. We're like trying to figure out what happened and what. But like this is something that like you truly need to see to believe.
yeah,
And give me 1 second. I have to pee so bad.
no problem.
Sorry, my bladder was about to explode.
Did you have a
No. God. You're a you're a you're a fucking madman, bro. That'd make it more difficult
the only way to discuss this movie is with a fully never mind.
with a fully erect penis.
Thank you, Felix.
There I fucking said it.
So diving
All right,
into the visual
going into visuals, let's go into visual and auditory appeal.
Yeah. So this is one that I struggled with because I want to say that most of the time the music in this movie is awesome and definitely adds a lot to the very high drama moments. So, for example, the music that's going on during the fight sequence, the music that's going on during some of the biggest reveals definitely adds a comedic nature to it because the music at times can be so serious and
I'm
fight
listening
style
to you.
movie while there's this incredibly random stuff going on. However, on the whole, I wasn't a huge fan of the way that this movie is shot. I didn't think that there was anything that was crazy, like in terms of cinematography and the way that we kind of bounce from scene to scene. The music I liked the auditory appeal better than the visual appeal. The only cool effect I really liked was the bullet sequence in which Yoko is saying that there's so many bullets flying around. And there were some semi-shoddy effects, as you mentioned, the explosion, things along those lines. So I'm gonna give it a 7, because it was good and not great, and there was very little for a movie of this runtime, I should say, that stood out to me. There weren't very many great like visual sequences, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, and I agree with you there. I gave it an 8 just because again, the music, while repetitive, I feel like the same song played about 4 or 5 times, but it played out in scenes where it was necessary.
Mm-hmm.
But and that also just goes to show you just like the music can be good and it can be used repetitively, and it's not like it's like a different like version or a different motif. Like it's literally the exact same song played out in like 5 different scenes, but it's because it works. And going into visual, there were some I literally have a note on here that says, "Why is this movie shot like a soap opera?" Like
Kind
there's
of, yeah.
scenes in this movie that are shot in 60 frames, and it's very jarring for a feature length film, especially one that's 4 hours long. And it changes. Like sometimes it's 60, but then sometimes it's back to 30 or 45. Like it's what do you want to do? What are you trying to be? Like, but again, like the music is the heavy carrier for this score, I would say. But going into pacing, like you wanted to get to, I gave it an 8 just because again, I didn't really feel the runtime until we got to the beach scene. And I believe that was what, like I said, like 2 hours and 45 minutes into the movie.
Yeah.
I would say, yeah, like you're already in, and I was invested so heavily that like even like the moments that get slowed down for you, like when we get that like I'm Miss Scorpion reveal from Aya, like that is when, like you said, the movie pumped the brakes a little bit and slowed down, but I was still engaged. Once we got to the bus, that's when I checked my watch and I was like, all right, how much time do we have in this movie?
Yeah,
But
this movie is
that's
kind of like driving with your friend who has no regard for the safety of his passengers because he will start slow and kind of get you comfortable. And then next thing you know, you're going 140 down a packed freeway with cop lights on your ass. So he slows down a little bit, loses himself in traffic. And once he feels comfortable again, now he wants to hit 200. So he really takes the fuck off. And then you crash and it just comes to a screeching halt and then it all ends.
and lo and behold, when the car crashed, all of his panty picks flew out of the glove box.
Exactly. Which is why I think I'm going to give this movie. All right. I'll give it an 8 because
Yeah.
as much as I would say that once we get to that kidnapping beach scene, the ending really does kind of drag a bit. Up until that point, there's some parts where it's moving at a breakneck pace, and you do feel as though every scene, for the most part, is pretty important. It all kind of leads to something, and it all at least will spend some time developing one of the characters or providing you insight onto their motives, so on and so forth. So it's almost the runtime is almost justified in my eyes, but it definitely could have moved along a little bit quicker at some points. It's very the pacing of this movie is very jarring because it does speed up, slow down, speed up, slow down.
And I'll agree with you on that. Like, I don't think the runtime is an issue for this movie. Like,
No, it's not. It's not the runtime. the problem.
Runtime becomes an issue when your name is the human condition.
So
But
when we get into acting, this is a difficult one. No, I think I'll give it a 9.
Heck yeah, because I agree.
Yeah, I mean, there's such a large cast and they all carry their weight.
I don't
Yeah,
think there
I
was a
feel
weak
good for 9.
performance in this movie.
Yeah.
I just think that like just the over the topness of it, like it's you don't get invested into it because of how over the top it is, but they all do their job and they all do like they perform their parts very well.
Yeah, the actors do a very good job of being melodramatic and over the top intentionally while still making you feel the weight of their decisions.
Yeah. And I'm gonna let you start off with suspension of disbelief because I'm still trying to figure out what my score is because I have no idea.
Yeah, so this is definitely the movie's weak point. For such a long movie, you could I get that it's an absurdist comedy, but you could at least still do us some favors here. I'm gonna go ahead and give it a 4 out of 10. There's some sequences in which I'm like, okay, people are just meeting people and becoming instant like connection, like very, very conveniently. The scene in which they're in the pouring rain is just, I get that you cannot think logically within the confines of a movie such as Love Exposure. However, I still wanted to do a good job of providing us a sense of realism within the rules that it sets for itself. So I'm not going to deduct points for the crazy fights or random sequences of kung fu because that's what this movie is. However, sometimes the plot does use some convenient writing in order to move the story along. And when you have a 4-hour runtime, you gotta make it work in a way that's convincing, even within the rules of this absurdist comedy that you've created. And I don't think that the movie does a great job of that. And I don't dislike the movie because of that, because I get it. I get what this movie is, and it's not a movie that's trying to ground you in reality by any means. But within the reality that the movie sets for itself, there are still quite a few conveniences that I picked up on that I'm not going to list for sake of our own episode's runtime that this made it the weakest category for me in that sense.
And I would say same. I gave it a 5 just for those reasons alone. Like I cannot believe anything that's in this movie, but I feel like that's what makes the movie work is that it's so absurd.
Yeah, and it's not the absurdity that I'm faulting it for. It's the lack of, for example, use friends, I guess you could say, how it's just an instant kind of, there's not a whole lot of development into the beginning of their friendship. There isn't.
Yeah, but they're like robbing stuff together and like getting like they're bonding over committing sins.
And I really have to say the biggest weak part of suspension of disbelief is the relationship between Tetsu and Kaori, because she literally is like rear-ending his fucking car and almost drowns him, and he's like, "I'm so in love with you." So like there's some of that where I'm like, come on.
I almost forgot. That's such a good stunt though. When that car flips over into the water, I thought he was dead. I was like, oh my God, they just killed Tetsu. And he just gets out of the car, no scratches. He's just wet.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of rolling my eyes personally, but I think we both have straight.
She jumps in the water. They're both laughing at each other. Like, dude, it's so absurd. Like, no two actual human beings would do that,
right? And that.
But then again, another person.
That's a lot of this movie. But what I'm saying is that it's just so like it just didn't work for me. It didn't work for me. I mean, yeah. So maybe it sounds like maybe we're giving this low scores for different reasons, but.
No, but I get what you're saying. Like there's levels to the absurdity that you're talking about that like doesn't fault the movie, but then there's absurd things like this where it's like it's absurd because it takes you out of the movie. Like you're almost thinking like, well, how does this relationship develop when this is what happens in the movie? Like how do you like it's like what you say, you set the rules for the movie. Like throughout this whole time, even like before that scene happens, Tetsu is not about Kaori at all. She wants nothing to do with her. And now she's just making the situation worse by ramming his car and like basically almost killing him and running him off the road. But instead of like being like, get away from me, you're psycho, get the hell away from me, he's just like, oh, I guess I do like you now.
Yeah, he turns on a dime, which It was very unlike his character. So, are we in agreement here for originality?
Oh yeah, dude, this is the most original thing I've ever seen.
Moving on.
It's it's but just to give a note on it, I cannot think of the only thing I can think of was Everything Everywhere, but that's because I had not seen something absurd like that or something visually appealing and crazy like that before until I watched this movie. And
Mhm.
just the premise of it, the themes that it dives into, and the way that it does, it's just there's nothing else like it. I could say that would lead into our personal attachments with the movie. What are you
Yes.
thinking?
I'm gonna give it a 3 because I have the personal relationship of knowing that I've never seen anything like it, and that's where it sits. I wouldn't say that there's any real emotional attachment to this movie, but I like the fact that I can say I've seen it now and I've experienced the crazy world of love exposure. So
You've been exposed to the love of love
exactly,
exposure. To
exactly.
which I also gave it a 3. Just we're gonna continue to talk about this movie for the rest of our lives, like you and me. Like just even just thinking about remember when we watched Love Exposure? Remember
Yeah.
when the girl cut off her dad's dick and it just like gushed out like a geyser? Like that's imagery you don't forget. And I'm glad that I can say that it's attaching to me because I can say I watched it with my friend Parker for our podcast.
Yeah.
And because outside of this, I don't think I've ever would have been exposed to this movie,
Definitely not. Yeah.
but I'm
Definitely not.
glad it did, which that
So
puts us movie at a 76.5. So I'll round it up to a 7 or no, we'll leave it at a 76.5,
yep.
which puts it another tie.
All right. So we need to go back to our personal attachment now. So what was your personal attachment for Fanny and Alexander?
It was a 2.
And I believe mine was a 3. Mine
I
was a 3, which, yeah, as much as I personally would put Fanny and Alexander probably above this, it does come down to our average personal attachment, which means that this will be going above Fanny and Alexander.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, you know what? Is it weird to say that personally to me, I kind of liked Fanny and Alexander more than this movie?
I
and
mean,
if you can agree with that, then I would say it can go below Fanny and Alexander.
I want to, but part of me also wants to go with the rule that we just set in our past episode.
Hey man,
And to be
it,
honest, I'm okay with it. Like I think I also liked personally Fanny and Alexander better.
so
So
then let's
yeah,
do that, man. It's our podcast. Who
yeah,
cares?
it's our fucking list. So yeah, we'll go ahead and plop with the tie of Love Exposure at number 5, which dang, they're really tight though for me. I enjoyed both of them.
I did for different reasons, but again,
Way different,
what?
way different reasons.
But I would personally return like we still have the 5-hour version of Fanny and Alexander to maybe watch someday.
This is true.
And I I would actually like to do that, but would I like to watch Love Exposure? Like I feel like my score for rewatchability for Franny and Alexander now that we've had time to sit on it would probably go up. Like I would return to Fanny and Alexander more than I would
Mhm.
return to Love Exposure, if
Yeah,
that
I would
makes any
agree.
sense.
I would agree. All
So
right, so
I
it's
would
time
say
to expose ourselves to the
let's
next
not do
movie.
that.
Not expose ourselves,
But
but it's
all
time for
right,
the
but
real to expose
dude,
itself.
look at this list, man.
I know it's
We're one away from a top 10 list.
it's just all these great movies and then Human Condition down there at 61.
Yeah, I don't care, Letterboxd community. I don't care what you think about Human Condition. That shit was awful.
All right, let's see it.
Personally, there
Spin
she is,
that
dude.
wheel.
We're gonna spin that wheel, bro. But no bad juju. We're not putting anything out there. Parker, any last opinions about Love Exposure?
Will this be our 6th foreign film in a row? Is that what it would be?
I mean, based off of your stat, was like what? Only 40% of these movies are American.
Or yeah, yeah. I'm loving it. I
So
mean, hey, we're still getting a lot of diversity. Like these
we
movies have
sure are.
been on a very large spectrum of I just got to say real quick, yeah, I like that Love Exposure gave us something other than a super heavy emotional baggage film because a lot of them have been. So it was a nice
Yeah.
little switch up. Let's see where the wheel takes us next.
Let's see it, buddy. All right, here we go. All right. Oh God. Oh, this makes me nervous. What are we doing?
I can't see it.
Let's
Ah.
go, baby. Let's fucking go.
I've never seen Spirited Away.
Oh my God, dude. You are in for a fucking treat. It's so, it's beautiful. Dude, I'm literally getting butterflies in my stomach. Dude, this movie, it's so good. So we have just spun 2001 Spirited Away, directed by Hayao Miyazaki. A young girl, Chihiro, becomes trapped in a strange new world of spirits. When her parents undergo a mysterious transformation, she must call upon the courage she never knew she had to free her family. Dude, this movie is so good.
Yeah,
But
I've
again,
always heard about Spirited Away. This is Studio Ghibli, right?
this is a Studio Ghibli film. This is the, at least like on, I don't know, on this list, but I mean it's considered among the greatest Ghibli film of all time. It's Miyazaki's like masterpiece.
I've heard.
But
Well, I'm
dude,
excited because
it's been a while since this is also the first movie that one of us has already seen.
yeah, it is.
Yeah. So it's going to be time for me to take my nostalgia glasses off. I saw this movie I think like 4 years ago, but I've seen this movie probably like 4 or 5 times, but we're going to dive into it. We're going to give it a score. We're going to see if that 5-star still holds up.
And this is the first movie that we've pulled in a while that I have heard of before watching it. I had never heard of Love Exposure. I'd never heard of A Separation. I'd never heard of Scenes from a Marriage. I had never heard of Fanny and Alexander, among others. So yeah, I'm excited to dive into Spirited Away. I think it'll be a good time. Our first animated movie as well.
Our first animated movie, and there's a couple on this list. I think a lot of them are Japanese, but this is as good as it gets, man. And I hope that you can join in with me on the love. Like this, you saw me, dude. I like ran around my living room. I'm so excited. Yeah, we're gonna watch Spirited Away. Let's go. All right. This gets me excited for the next episode. But as always, Parker, it is a pleasure and an honor to speak with you about these movies. We're now 2 hours into recording.
I know this one was a marathon between our technical difficulties and just talking about the plot. I mean, this is a heck of an episode, and if you stuck with us this whole time, thanks for listening, because this ran about half the length of the movie itself.
You're the real heroes.
Yeah.
But Parker, where can people find you?
You can find me on I'm not going to say what I was thinking about saying. Yeah, you can find me on Letterboxd. I got some panty photos dropping soon. Parker _.
Good God. If you can find a way, please do. Just wait till Letterboxd is like, oh, who's tagging me in all these posts? It's a dude with panty photos. Oh my God. You can also find me on Letterboxd. It's ETZIO911. You can also follow the LetterBros pod on Instagram, on TikTok, and on YouTube for the video version of this episode. For the podcast version, you can find it on anywhere you get your podcast: Apple Podcast, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get it. And make sure to leave a review. Leave 5 stars. We work hard to try and talk about these movies in a very organized fashion. It's tough, man. There's not a lot of people that can do what we do, man. You know, it's not like there's like 16 trillion movie podcasts out there, but you know, who says that they can do it and watch 100 movies with their best friend and talk about it? But
these movies, some of these are commitments, man. It's not like we're out here watching Back to the Future.
You know how hard it is to do an hour-long episode about a separation?
Okay, yeah, that was a challenge. It was a good movie, though.
I know, but that was the hardest pod we've ever done. But
I do want to encourage to anyone who is following along on this journey that we're taking. Once you find out what the movie is, like, I'm sure that it's so much better if you watch along and then discuss with us as we talk about it in the next episode. So look at it as a little bit.
It keeps the dialogue going. It keeps the conversation being made, and we get to talk about, you know, movies that I personally love. Like I love Spirited Away. Parker's never seen it, so we'll see what his opinion is on it being fresh, because I feel like there's a lot of people that have seen this movie, so it's going to be interesting to see what a first time watcher sounds like for Spirited Away.
Looking forward to it.
Same here, but until then, we'll see you at the movies.